All right, for number 7, we're doing 5a divided by a plus 5 times 10a plus 10 divided by a. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to factor everything. If I can take something out, we're going to take it out. So if I look at my first thing, we have 5a on top. I can't really factor anything out of that. On the bottom, I have 5a plus 5. So I'm going to factor out a 5, which will leave me with a plus 1. Now I know it was a plus 1 because I did divided by 5, divided by 5. For the second one, on top, I have 10a plus 10. So I can take a 10 out of both of those. So we're going to have times 10 times a plus 1. And that one is divided by just a. Now, since we're multiplying, you can go ahead and just make this like one big fraction bar. And at top, you have 5a times 10 plus a plus 1. On the bottom, you have a 5 and a plus 1. We're looking for things that match again. I noticed we have an a plus 1 and an a plus 1. So those two are going to cancel. I also noticed there's a 5 right here and a 5 right here. Those are going to cancel. We have an a and we have an a. Those are going to cancel. So really, all I'm left with this one is a 10 on top and a 1 on the bottom. So my final answer would be 10. If I simplify that guy, the answer is 10. Just remember, you're factoring everything, canceling out the factors that are the same on the top and on the bottom. For number 2, we have x squared minus 4 over x squared plus 6x plus 9 times x squared minus 9 over x squared plus 4x plus 4. Again, we're going to factor everything and put it together. So if I factor the top, I notice that they're both perfect squares. I can take the square root of x squared. I can take the square root of 4. So that tells me we're going to have x. Well, we're going to have a plus and a minus. The square root of x squared gives me x. So that's my first term for both. The square root of 4 gives me 2. So that's my second term for both. We're going to simplify the denominator. Remember, when we're multiplying, we're just really making one big fraction, so I'm going to extend my bar now. For the second one, we have x squared plus 6x plus 9. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so I have a little more room. For that one, we are going to go ahead and use the x method. So if I make my x, on top we're going to have 9, and on the bottom we have 6. So what can I multiply to get 9 and add to get 6? You're going to have 3 and 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 plus 3 is 6. So on the bottom, we have x plus 3 and x plus 3. Again, that takes care of our first fraction. For the second one on top, we have x squared minus 9. Notice I can take the square root of x squared. I can take the square root of 9. So just like the first one, we're going to have two fractions. One's going to be plus, one's going to be minus. The square root of x squared, I don't really want to use that color. The square root of x squared gives me x, so that's my first term here and here. And the square root of 9 gives me 3, so that's my second term for both. And then last but not least, we got to do this bottom part here. We have x squared plus 4x plus 4. Again, we're going to use the x method for that one. When I set up my x, we have a 4 on top and a 4 on the bottom. So it multiplies to 4 and adds to 4. It's going to be 2 and 2. So we have x plus 2 and an x plus 2. Again, we're going to cross out anything that's on top and on the bottom. So I see an x plus 2 and an x plus 2. I see an x plus 3 and I see an x plus 3. Those are the only things that cancel. So on top, I'm left with x minus 2 times x minus 3. And on the bottom, I'm going to zoom quick. On the bottom, we're left with x plus 3 and x plus 2. While we're talking about this, if you flipped around your fractions, so if I wrote x minus 3, x minus 2 over x plus 2 times x plus 3, those say the same thing. So either of those will be your correct answers. And that is how you do number 8.